So ladies and gentlemen, right in this convention center, just a few weeks ago, we gathered to launch Africa's continental free trade area. And it was an exciting moment for the heads of state and for all stakeholders who were here. But much needs to be done. Can I just say that to date, Rwanda, Kenya, and Ghana have ratified the treaty, and if there are any others, we'd love to know about that. We expect others to follow as well soon, but we are moving forward. There is a critical role that ICT plays on this journey, and we have to get the building blocks right. That's what we're discussing today, the economic liberation of 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of $2 trillion. What role does ICT play? Thank you to the panel who are with me. And Secretary General Zhao, I'll begin with you, I think. This session looks at building blocks. Take us through what needs to happen to ensure smooth implementation of the CFTA, and with ICTs in particular as an enabler of progress and growth, please.
Excellency, President of Rwanda, Mr. Kagame, the representative of head of states of Africa, Smart Africa Board, and Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to join this session this morning. I think that everybody realizes the importance of ICT. I think that I think that very well accepted everywhere. As our Secretary General of the United Nations just informed us last year at our meeting of ITU that he considers ICT is a very powerful tool to help us to achieve each and every single SDG goals. I think that that is very much recognized. But however, whether our Africa need ICT or Africa could use ICT to transform Africa, that seems to be not very well recognized by every people, particularly outside of Africa. So I noted that with my limited contact, the leaders or the business people or our friends, partners from our side, they consider that Africa always put the priority of energy, road, water, food, and it seems to be that ICT is far away from Africa. So I try to tell them that it's not true, because in Africa, we have SMEs everywhere. We have countries push for the ICT development, broadband development in the continent. Above all, there is also good initiative from President Kagame to launch the project for Smart Africa, which focused on ICT to transform Africa. And this initiative is initiative from our African leaders. It's from central part of Africa continent. It's from Africa line. And this initiative, I'm very pleased to see the progress so rapidly that 3 years ago it's only seven countries. Last year already reached 16. Now this morning we heard that it's only 22, which means what? Which means Africa members realize that the ICT is an important tool to transform Africa. They support this great initiative. So we have to work together to make sure that this initiative will have great success. And ICT is very proud to be partners of this project. I think that you want me to stop. Let me just stop here for
we'll come back to
and let me once more again express my gratitude for invitation from President Kagame to join this fourth session of this Transform Africa Summit.
Thank you, and I will come back to you in a short while. But just to get a sense, there's an evolution, Zhao is telling us, and the awareness of the importance of ICT, and I think this room itself is proof of that. Let me come to you now, Dr. Abu Zaid, looking at your role. I want to understand how ICT is working to address the current barriers that we see that are evident in all our environments. Tell us, what are you doing to transform things? What's working and how can we scale up?
Just to add, maybe to introduce some language diversity. So those who, I'll be speaking French, so this is the time you put your headphones if that's okay with everyone. Donc, je vous remercie donc pour cette question, mais j'aimerais aussi donc insister sur l'aspect de comment les TIC pourraient donc un instrument très effectif pour la libéralisation du commerce à travers le continent. Comme vous le savez, cette année, l'Union africaine a lancé 3 projets phares. Donc, nous avons lancé en janvier le marché unique pour le transport aérien. Et ça, c'est dans le but, encore une fois, donc, de faciliter le commerce. Nous avons lancé, justement, il y a presque un mois, la zone de libre-échange pour le commerce. Et troisièmement aussi, le projet pour la mobilité des personnes et des biens à travers le continent. Tout ça, ça se complémente. Et rien de cela ne pourrait marcher sans les TIC. Pour le transport aérien, vous n'êtes pas sans savoir que ça ne marche pas sans les TIC. La même chose pour la mobilité des personnes actuellement, enfin les procédures et les visas et tout ça, ça se fait à travers les TIC. Mais spécifiquement pour le commerce. Nos pays, nous avons des problèmes concernant, nous avions dans le passé, enfin et ça continue un petit peu encore, donc les problèmes concernant le commerce interafricain causés d'abord par des problèmes structurels, donc la nature de nos produits qu'on exporte et qui sont en principe des matières premières, donc il y a besoin de transformation et d'industrialisation, ou bien d'accélérer l'industrialisation. Deuxièmement, par le manque d'infrastructures, donc un problème infrastructurel. Et c'est là où nous intervenons en tant qu'Union africaine, mais aussi nos pays, donc pour les projets régionaux, pour faciliter le transport dans tous les domaines, mais un transport intelligent, puisque nous insistons maintenant pour des corridors, smart corridors, ou bien les corridors intelligents. Nous insistons sur l'infrastructure de base et l'infrastructure ICT ou TIC, justement, parce que c'est pour faciliter les échanges. Et puis, il y a aussi donc les aspects de facilitation de commerce. Et la facilitation de commerce ne peut pas se faire sans les TIC. Que ce soit au niveau national, au niveau de nos ports et aéroports et ainsi de suite, soit entre pays. Donc, la facilitation et une plateforme de données qui permet aussi d'avoir l'information, parce qu'il n'y a pas que la facilitation enfin, pour les procédures, mais aussi les échanges de données pour avoir quels sont les besoins de part et d'autre, ou bien les requirements, comme on dit. Donc, une plateforme pour les données aussi. L'Union africaine aussi travaille pour sécuriser cet espace cyber à travers notre convention pour la cybersécurité, mais aussi la protection des informations et des données personnelles. C'est essentiel à travers toujours l'Union africaine. Il y a plein de choses à dire, mais je vais m'arrêter là.
Thank you very much for that. And we'll stay with the building blocks, you know, coming out of that and the insight that, look, really it's embedded into everything that we do. ICT really is it's about everything. It's important to every aspect. Dr. I come to you now, and a few weeks ago, we were having the same discussion at the launch of the Continental Free Trade Area on the role of ICT. And as part of the building blocks, you touched on the importance of a trust economy. I want you to speak through the critical building blocks and once again tell us what is this trust economy and how do we ignite it?
All right, thank you very much. I hope I'll also be able to then come back and say a few words about what we are doing concretely on ICT and Development Africa. One of the main challenges of entry into electronic commerce is really the deficit of trust between the procurer and the supplier of a service. And particularly in terms of physical purchase of goods, we are anticipating that as we get mainstream on the electronic trading platforms, we're going to be hit by a tsunami of parcels. So apart from just the physical infrastructure of delivery, we still face the critical challenge that we live at a time when if you are trying to purchase something in another country, you click a button, you swipe your card, and you pray that you'll get what you've paid for. Now, click and pray is not good enough as a basis of trade. And part of the evidence of this is that overwhelming majority of e-commerce in the world is business to business, because there are other sinews and avenues of cultivating that trust beyond formal regulation. So as we build infrastructure of African integration, we must grow trust and good laws particularly on return goods, particularly on the integrity of the payment system and regulatory environment that grows as enterprise. Having said that, I want to say a few things about what we have to do about ICT. One of the most important things about this meeting here is that immediately in the morrow of a CFTA signing, we are seeing the importance of pari passu to the construction of integrated physical infrastructure. Africa needs a soft infrastructure of e-connectedness. And we make some contributions to this. The most widely used electronic customs management platform in the world, Asikuda, is a product of UNCTAD. And already in Rwanda and Uganda, for example, we have built on the backbone of this platform already in initial phases of completing single window, thanks to funding from Trademark East Africa. We have seen how miracles have happened. 7 years ago, Afghanistan was making $50 million in customs collections. With Asikuda, last year they made $1 billion. And we want to see how streamlining services, making them electronic, virtual connectedness, and building a cross-border trust synergies is going to create the single marketplace that we desire for Africa.
Thank you so much for that. Can I just ask, how many people trust that if they order something from a country on the other side of Africa, from wherever you are, that you might receive it? If you would do it and you'd put the money in, just put your hand up, please. Let me just get a sense. Ooh, that's bad. That's maybe, what, 10%? Can I say that we did a test with some fashion items from Nigeria, ordered, paid, and they arrived in very good condition. This top I'm wearing, material and stitching in Tanzania, ordered and paid, arrived, and it works perfectly well. I challenge you all to try it. And as we move from that to private sector perspective, Strive, we're happy to have you here because, of course, you've been in this field, pushing on, fighting for the space, creating, new models of business for a very long time. Tell us, what are your thoughts on the building blocks? What's working for you, and what are the challenges?
Well, first of all, it's always a great pleasure to be in Rwanda. Thank you, President Kagame, for your extraordinary vision and leadership over this issue. Let's pivot from where you left off. We talk of ICT sometimes in very generic terms. Perhaps sometimes we need to kind of begin to dig deep. One of the great ICT developments is the work Africa has done in financial inclusion, payment systems, okay? Those of us who are not from Kenya don't like to use, from my industry, don't like to use the word M-Pesa because it's a competitor's product. I prefer to say EcoCash.
Well, there we go, EcoCash.
And I won't mention MTN's version here because they need to pay me a commission for that. But look, this is one of the most extraordinary developments out of Africa. Millions of people have come into financial inclusion because of mobile wallets developed in Africa. Virtually every African country today has a mobile payment system. This part of the architecture that will drive us forward. Now what we need to do is not only to deepen those platforms, but to make them interoperable across states. Okay? You talk of creating trust platforms where you can buy and send goods. This is a simple ICT solution. The Chinese developed it long ago, and out of it came Alipay, which is a $150 billion company. That's how Alibaba and them were developed. We have to encourage our entrepreneurs to come up with those solutions. So there's no, it's not rocket science. This is where ICT will take us. We need to improve in so many other areas, insuring people, the insurance sector in ICT. So the whole fintech space has a lot of runway to go. We look at platforms around education. We haven't even begun to do what we can do with education in this space, as well as healthcare. So we need to begin now to deepen and make our way through to begin to talk about those soft architectures, payment systems that are interoperable, market access systems that open up access to tools of markets. So, but we still have to build hard infrastructure. Right. As I said yesterday at the meeting, we made tremendous progress at the beginning of the mobile industry in getting connectivity. But we haven't been that quick in rolling out things like 4G, let alone the 5G. Okay? There are a lot of countries today that are not fully rolled out on 4G, and certainly in terms of giving access to more people.
And who is stopping that? Where's that gap? What's the constraint?
Well, it's a combination of factors. We've got to invest. For the private sector to feel they have to invest, there have to be incentives. We have to go back to ensuring that we're not quick to take taxes and build other regulatory hurdles. So there's a lot of work to be done around spectrum allocations and so forth that will make it easier for the private sector to begin to put in the capital that is necessary to take us to that level.
Thank you. Dr. Mukisa Kitwe, I see you nodding your head. So
yes, there are two levels to this.
Yes, yeah.
First of all, it is a public responsibility that every country in Africa sees that there's no future without occupying its rightful place in the digital marketplace. Unfortunately, there is a deficit of political will or political knowledge of the critical importance of digital economy.
Is it fear?
In many countries, priority is not sufficiently made. You create a Ministry of ICT, and you don't see ICT as an all-government responsibility. So segmenting the marketplace reduces the budget for investment, and you transfer the responsibility to the private players. We at UNCTAD are working with some governments. Right now, we are doing diagnostic studies in Burkina Faso, Madagascar, Zambia, Togo, Uganda, on what is the state of play in the digital marketplace in the country. What are the regulatory requirements? What are the skill content development requirements? You have to quantify your problem before you go in the marketplace to see how you deal with that. And that is extremely important for this continent.
And these are the critical building blocks. Dr. Abu Zaid, please.
Yes, I wanted to refocus again on intra-African trade and how ICT is enabling that. The first point is about a harmonized regulatory framework across the continent, because as we roll out, the connectivity across the continent, and it's happening, true, not at the pace that we wish, but it is happening. So we want to make sure also that our regulatory framework is harmonized in a way to facilitate these exchanges we're talking about. The second aspect, we want this process, whether it's trade or otherwise, to be inclusive. And this is where I remind everyone that on the continent, we still have important divides, digital divides. Urban, rural, women, men, and some countries in stages of development that are different from the others. And we want to make sure to, when we roll out our strategies as well, that we are mindful of that. The third point, and that's related to trade, but many other things, is big data. And the thing is, not many people are talking about big data, whereas it's very important and crucial. You know, now the products are sold or are advertised or marketed tailored to the needs of the client and not the other way around. And this only happens when you have enough data and you analyze them, and then you start pushing to the clients the products that they like. So I see across the continent 2 or 3 organizations now that are working and developing this big data, and I think this is going to be a breakthrough also for our strive into many fields, including trade.
Thank you for that. Now, Secretary General Zhu, I come back to you for your thoughts.
Okay. I think that...
yes, maybe that one.
This one doesn't work. It works. I think that, in fact, we do need to put the investment in the ICT infrastructure. And as far as the infrastructure is concerned, we know that still today, more than half the population not connected online yet. To have e-commerce, to have e-governance, to have you need to connect the people not connected yet. And you need to offer those connected with better services, better qualities. So we need investment. But when we talked about investment, we found problems. Why is those people not connected yet? Because there's no investment there. They are where they are. They're in the poor area. They're in the places it's not a big profit. So that we have to encourage public-private investment there. And then public-private investment means that the public, I agree with my colleagues, the public authority has responsibilities to go to the area where the so-called market rules is not working. Then you have to go to the area. You have to put some public money to do some basic work, to invite the others to come to join. You have to create a better environment to attract the investment, because you cannot force investment. You can only attract the investment. Just to let you, I think last year I mentioned one topic, that we try to connect 1.5 billion people online by 2020. And some statistics show that we need 450 billion US dollars. But the World Bank, the others said, we don't have this money. Public, Carlos Slim told us that 450 billion, you are joking, you need more. So that one side we don't have public money, one side we don't have enough money as planned. So we need to have a good environment to encourage investment here. Now here, we also have problems. Look at the many cases, when government assigned money, the financial minister gives money to education ministry, to for health ministry, and the telecom authority may not have any money. So that is the issue. Or you see that the others may have money, but they may also realize that the ICT is a very important tool for them to improve their system. Mm-hmm. So they could invest in ICT. But if each of them do that business alone, that could also a problem for us. It's not the most efficient way. So how can we use public limited resources to make a best use of ICT to facilitate socio-economic development? So there are a lot of issues here. But I'm very pleased that this issue now become more and more topic. Right. And when I visited our Africa member states, and they already put this on the agenda to talk about how can we have a national e-strategy to facilitate investment in infrastructure. And I highlight the importance of infrastructure as our challenges, then investment, and then also innovation. Innovation is quite important. That SMEs could provide marvelous solutions to connect not connected yet with new technologies. So we have to work with them, and of course inclusiveness is also very important. We should not leave anybody behind.
Thank you very much for that. Infrastructure, investment, innovation, inclusiveness, and my question to all those ministers and those representing government in the room, the question asked by the Secretary General, why are some people not connected? Why? It makes such a difference. I'm coming to special interventions, but before I do that, I just want a very brief interventions from each of the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a moment to just recognize the role that Mo Ibrahim played in trying to create one network for Africa with Celtel. Ahead of his time, fighting battles with governments, with countries. Can we just give him a round of applause for being so bold and for making that effort? And I come to this panel with the message that one person can make an incredible difference. So in your space, with what you are doing, what are you doing that's most exciting that this room should know about? But also, who do you challenge, either in this room or outside this room, that has a key role to play? Strive, I want to begin with you on that end.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I was there when Mo Ibrahim was doing that, and he was fighting me too. But we're great friends now, and we do great things together. He's a great entrepreneur. We're the most exciting, we're doing a lot of exciting things, but obviously one of the most transformative things we are doing is the Pan-African Fiber Network. We began to build this about 10, 15 years ago. We saw that fiber optics was going to be a critical piece of infrastructure for broadband. Because we can talk about mobile services, but without fiber optic networks. So we saw an opportunity to build a Pan-African network. And we built from Cape Town in South Africa. We've built now over 60,000 kilometers. We're on the border of Ethiopia. So our fiber runs through all those countries. We've got 3 countries to go to complete our vision, and we've now got approval with all 3, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. We hope to get there by the end of this year. Incredible. We will then have completed Cape to Cairo.
Wow. Amazing.
Now we are beginning the route going west. So we'll be building 2,500 kilometers from Khartoum to N'Djamena, and then on to Maiduguri, Nigeria. And then we begin the journey west. I've been told by the Minister of Togo I can't get to Ghana without going through Togo, so I promised I will go through Togo, okay? So I've made the public
No one left behind. No.
But we obviously want to expand our network, connecting all the different African countries. And this is hard physical infrastructure. We've built this with people digging with picks and shovels.
And on this continent, we know what work that is. So the round of applause that you just got a few moments ago was recognition of the effort and the sweat that you've put in, and thank you for that. Daktari, for you, what's most exciting, but also who might you have a challenge for?
All right. The first challenge, those who do not have a clear destination cannot get lost. And we encourage the laggards in the political leadership to look at what people like Paul Kagame are doing.
Yes.
And start defining national destinations. When they do, we help them. We've just completed a national ICT policy study for Egypt, and I'm glad to, the Minister of ICT is in this room, has been a very good partner. And just the work we've done together, funded by MasterCard, is positioning Egypt to be a major competitor in the e-commerce space on the continent over the coming period. And such efforts at national commitment between the gaps and policy alignments is what is going to be a driver of what we do. Secondly, it is extremely important that we mobilize a constituency, particularly of young people, who force their politicians that relevant politics must be aligned with our digital inclusion. The major project I'm doing, we launched in Kigali July last year, the eFounders Initiative. I started off last year with 25, last November, 25 young netpreneurs we sent to the Alibaba Institute in Hangzhou. They have come back, some of them from this country. This Friday, we are opening the applications. We have received 1,000. Next month, we're taking another 40 African net entrepreneurs for this training. Thanks to the Alibaba Foundation's partnership with UNCTAD, we want to populate the continent with people who know what they want and force politics to align with their appetite.
Thank you so much. So political will, alignment and drive, but also the importance of skills building, training and education to tap into the potential. Dr. Abu Zaid.
Well, through the African Union, of course, well, in addition to physical infrastructure, we're pushing for to make all our infrastructure smart infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier. So this is one. Two, that we are harmonizing the policies across the continent. We developed the Convention for Cybersecurity Personal Data Protection. We are working through Smart Africa to roll out many of these initiatives, working with UNCTAD on the e-commerce front across the continent, working with ITU to bridge the device across the continent. At last but not least, that we also have our programs to push for e-health, e-entrepreneurship, e-governance, and we are starting the first continental e-governance academy to help our member states. And if I have a challenge or what I'm challenging the mindset.
Yes.
I'm challenging the mindset and insisting that ICT is the backbone of all sectors and we all have to be engaged exactly to the point that was mentioned earlier by Dr. Kitui. We cannot work in silos. It's mainstreamed and that's my challenge.
Excellent. And President Kagame had tapped into mindset as well at the beginning of the opening session. Secretary General, your thoughts? Okay.
If I may, I would also like to suggest that we should look at development at the regional, sub-regional level as well. Because with ICT development in the continent, we found that a lot of marvelous stories from many countries. And we do see a very good rapid development, ICT infrastructure and technologies in the countries. But if we will address the issue of regional members coordination, like you eliminated roaming charges from East Africa in 2015, and then 2016, that West Africa also eliminating. This is the leaders in the world, because we are everywhere talking about eliminating roaming charges, but Africa has done that. Mm-hmm. And this regional coordination, I think that will help us to increase our capacities much quicker. That we are not work together, as a region. So this is something I would very much like to suggest that we can do. And another thing is, since Africa is very dynamic, present a lot of potentials for business people outside Africa. And many partners like to come with our Africa partners to have business here. I think that here you also have challenges. How can you cope with this kind of flooding in that right. Request and the partner initiatives? I think that the more important in my opinion, that Africa would beneficial if we present our priorities, we present our right. Strategies, and ask the others to come together to partner with us, rather than we just accept the initiatives or plans from the others.
Absolutely.
So that will be okay, you want me to stop?
No, please, go ahead.
That is the way to ask me to stop.
Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Are you done?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I will be back, though. I will. No, but if you had more, sir, please, yes.
The other thing is that my colleague already mentioned that in Africa it's very dynamic. The SMEs are very dynamic. They have marvelous young generation engineers, entrepreneurs. They have marvelous idea about new technologies, market need. They develop their local solutions, local applications to help people. I think that this, I heard also that made in Africa. And if we can, try to find a way from some kind of regional coordinations, sub-regional coordinations, because we may not be able to have the big giant very quickly. But if we coordinate among ourselves, that could be easier. That this initiative to have one Africa network, this initiative to have a single-digit Africa market, that is marvelous, and that is the basis for any future good development. So I think that the potential is there, and who will do the job, I think it's the young entrepreneurs. So we have to try to find a way to encourage them, and we have to find a way to unite them. We have to find a way to promote them, so that we will be able to move much faster.
Thank you so much. So regional initiatives are critical, but also I think the fact that we need our agenda, we need to know what we want. We need to position ourselves very carefully. Let me come now to our special interventions, and let me welcome the President of the United Nations General Assembly, Miroslav Lajčák, to come up to the podium and give us his thoughts. Thank you so much, sir. You have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by thanking President Kagame and people of Rwanda for welcoming us here to Kigali. As the President of the United Nations General Assembly, it's an honor to be here, not only because of the role Rwanda plays on the international stage, through its contribution to the United Nations peacekeeping and as a champion of the sustainable development, but also because Kigali has been the home for initiatives which look set to change the course of history. And this summit is one of them. As we all know, it's called the Transform Africa Summit. But this is not just about Africa, because when Africa transforms, so does our whole world. And this is clear also from the mix of people in this room today, from heads of state to CEOs, and coming not only from Africa's 54 countries, but from all corners of the world. And I'm delighted to address you today, and I will make 3 very brief points. First, about our context today, because we cannot talk about Africa's single digital market without first talking about Africa itself. And when we look to this continent, we see some things very clearly: opportunity, ambition, innovation, growth, and most importantly of all, hope. Because for all the gains that have been made, there are many more on the horizon. The continent is surging ahead with its own development. It has set an ambitious vision through the African Union's Agenda 2063, and it's shaping our global development agenda by its leadership in implementing our global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that despite the opportunities, Africa still faces huge challenges. So we must look at both opportunities and the challenges. And if we want to do it properly, we need to focus on technology, which is my second point. The digital revolution has changed almost everything about our lives: how we talk to each other, how we buy and sell, how we provide the services that make our societies go around. And we do not need to look far to see this in action. Innovation is blooming in Kenya's Silicon Savannah. Exciting social and commercial startups are getting off the ground in Nigeria. And here in Rwanda, people can access doctors and healthcare on their mobile phones. So as I said, when Africa transforms, so does the world outside of this continent. And just imagine what else could be achieved if there was a digital single market. If the barriers came down, if integration deepened, if all the ideas, creativity, innovation, and skills on this continent could be shared and pooled more easily, I believe that the potential is limitless. And that's why I'm glad we are here to take a step closer to make this a reality. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the single digital market may now seem like a dream, and it will not be easy to realize. There is hard work ahead. But make no mistake, Africa can do it, and it will do it. This is a continent on the up. It will continue to rise, and we can either watch from the sidelines, or we can work in partnerships and rise together. Thank you very much, and good luck in your discussions.
Thank you so much for inspiring us. Thank you. Yes, you've done very well. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you feel inspired and we can see the partnerships and the will for Africa to really rise. I'm very excited now to welcome Carlos Slim to come up and make his intervention with his knowledge, rich wealth of understanding of different things. What is your view, sir, on Africa? What do you see? Can we do this? Let's give him a round of applause as he comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Rwanda, Mr. Paul Kagame, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here in Kigali, and it is a big emotion looking and living what are you doing and what is happening today. It's for me very impressed how you are working together to transform Africa. I look this transformation like a reality. It is on their way. It's not a concept, it's not an idea, it's not a dream. It is a reality that you are working already on that. And also it's clear that you have the direction how to move that. The concept of the universal digital inclusion should be universal. With this concept of the One Africa network, I think should be two networks, one for fixed and one for mobile. And if you have this possibility that is not very complicated with investment of private sector, public sector, financing, and make it a business plan that make it profitable. It will be very soon that it can be executed and it can be available, because in this concept of the digital culture and the digital reality we are living, especially for this broadband, there are many concepts. One is the infrastructure, other is the commercialization, the marketing, other is to put in the network the e-commerce, the bank commerce, the education, health, etc., etc. It's very impressed how Africa is looking the most modern of all the things that can be done with this more advanced technology, at the same time that you need to solve problems of poverty, of extreme poverty, that you have a lot of problems in health, in education, that you have a lot of people living in rural areas, maybe, I don't know, 70, 80% of the people. What is interesting is that you are working and attacking both extremes, the most modern and the lowest of the marginal problems that are very, very important to take care of them. But it's also very interesting that this work, this digital advances, this technology will help to solve the other problems faster, will be more efficient to give education. You can begin from initial education, basic education, etc. And what you need is connectivity. You need to have everyone with access to this connectivity. So you are, by one side, going to the most advanced of all the technologies in this revolution, in this new civilization that we are living, and you are going to the most advanced, but also you will take the solution. You need to attack the other problems. The other problems mainly are health, education, infrastructure, and one that will be maybe the biggest challenge is city planning, because many of the people that are living in rural areas will try to come to the cities, like happened in all the countries in the world in the last 200 years, 150 years. And you need to make what you will do locally to make people stay there, and what you need to do for city planning. I think this is very, very important, and this digital culture will accelerate the development of all the society in all the ways. We have already done a platform in Mexico, like 4 years ago. We call it Aprende, where you have the connectivity, you have the content, and you can learn from initial education, Khan Academy, Coursera, and very advanced education, free, and can be certificated. And I admire what you are doing. Where Latin America was also a colony, it has been difficult to get together, and congratulations for achieving this, with this effort, the union of many countries of Africa, that I am sure that when you begin to have this one network, one African network, all the countries will look to take together to have the benefits of this network available for everyone. Just to finish, two things. First, you talk why there is not connectivity everywhere. I think it can be solved, like in US, that is the wealthiest country in the world. There is a fund, they collect something for everyone, and they pay for the service. Around 20 million of the Americans has a service paid by the government. That is a cross-subsidy that will be done in many areas. In other places is the regulation, and in other places is the handsets, the cost of the handsets. But this program in US, there is a fund. There are some countries that have a fund that is paid by the users, by the high-income users, and that is used to subsidize the consumption of the people that don't have the money, and the carrier, the company that is giving the service, need to give free the terminal, give free the cellular, and with some use that is voice and data, and with some quality to get connected. That is the way that they have solved in US, that's United States. It's a good point for that. Well, and the other thing is just to repeat that the President Kagame in his presentation make the essential points that is the basis of this association, of this development, of this way to change Africa, to transform Africa, that is very important to study, but also that in the agreements between the community, these 22 countries, they make some kind of guarantees about the security of the investments, the security of the regulation, and that will make very easy, not very easy, but I think will be very interesting to invest in this one network, one only network, or two networks for Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause. Thank you for that intervention, sir. As we come to the close, I'm going to come to each of the panelists for a final comment. It's what I would call a snippet. You know, what is that sharp, short thing that you would leave us with? And I'm going to ask Paul Kagame, President Kagame, to also be ready. I will ask you for a final word, a snippet, a way forward as we close this session. So let me share an African proverb with you. Suffering is a teacher. And if we think of it that way, Africa has had many teachers for a long period of time. But what have we learned, right? What's the way forward? What's the strategic direction? What's the wisdom? What's the inspiration? What's the action? I'm coming to each of you to share that with us. Secretary General, I'll begin with you, please.
You talk about suffering and teachers. You know, we have this kind of common slogan that we should not leave Africa behind. It seems to be always Africa left behind. That is suffering. But yesterday I heard from President Kagame that this word should not be always true. You know, that in fact, I think that in Africa, as I mentioned, is quite a number of areas in ICT applications, Africa is leading some development. But for me, if you ask me to give very short comments, I would like to just say that, you know, let's work together for the future of Africa, for the future of the world. Yes.
Thank you. Let's work together for the future of Africa and the future of the world. Dr. Busari.
I think I'll put together many of the things we said this morning, starting by your very beautiful shirt. The single air market, the single free trade area, single digital market, trade in one brand that should be the one that's driving us all. Proudly made in Africa.
Proudly made in Africa. Let's push that. Dr.
Yes. So far, we have been showing why it's critically important for Africa to play catch-up and even innovate to lead. And we're trying to mobilize political will in Africa and in the corporates and impact investors to address this challenge. But I think we should not take away from the reality that multilateral institutions have a responsibility they cannot run away from. If digital inclusion is a critical driver of sustainable development goals, it is sad that over the past 5 years, global aid for trade allocations to the digital economy has declined from 3% to 1%.
Has declined.
Has declined. Oh. And today, on the 21st of April, President Jim Kim of the World Bank announced that the recapitalization of the bank has brought $100 billion more into the fold. But the multilateral lending institutions are only allocating 1% of their portfolio to ICT-related investment. I think ODA partners, multilateral institutions, and the development community has to face the reality that beyond the political will, particularly in LDCs, multilateral global financing for development commitments are necessary to ramp up the necessary funding for Africa's digital inclusion.
Thank you for that. A strong challenge there. Strive.
You know, for all of us sitting in this room, the elephant in the room is the unemployment of our young people. We have a massive, massive challenge on our hands. None of the things that we hope for can happen if we cannot create jobs. When young people are having to cross the Sahara and the Mediterranean in search of work, when we have all that we have on this continent. So what we need to do is to empower young people. We need to open up this continent so that its entrepreneurs can begin to create the jobs. And that's what I see in the Continental Free Trade Area. Trade. Young people, young entrepreneurs being empowered. So whatever tools we have, and certainly ICT is not a panacea for all our problems. Let's not get carried away. It's a tool in our hands. But ultimately, we must not leave this room not thinking about what are we going to do to create jobs for young people. A lot of the things that are available to us don't create jobs. And some of these technologies that are coming through, if we don't equip our young people with the right education, the right skills, they will not get jobs. And then we will get revolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. That is one of the most critical building blocks. As a mother watching my children, I see the importance of the right education to prepare them to either succeed in this new world of digital or to fail miserably. And we must decide as nations, as parents. President Kagame, I warmly welcome you to come up to the podium, having heard what the panel has said and where you started us off this morning. What are your final words for us, if you would, please? Thank you. Let's give the President a round of applause as he comes up. Thank you. Thank you.
Big surprise for me, but let me try. Well, first of all, it starts for me with, you know, when I came to government, which translates into, first of all, doing politics, the first question to myself was, what am I supposed to be doing in politics? But what are my priorities? What am I supposed to do with all this? So the first realization for me was the business of government or of politics is allowing the people you lead to thrive, to develop based on doing many things, including business. That was my first business. My first business was to allow business to happen for people in my country. But doing business, thriving on that basis of the activities you do, involves technology, involves efficiency, involves innovation, entrepreneurship. You have said all that. Those are very key to what we find we have to do together between government and private sector. So in Africa, we have to have that mindset of allowing business to be done the right way and to enable everybody to be part of that, meaning the 1.4 billion people you talked about, is to give them that opportunity. It's to allow all those who are in the market to be able to do whatever they can, and many people have many possibilities, and provide just that environment that allows things to happen. So we invest in education, we invest in health, we invest in infrastructure, all that to produce talent, skills, to have a healthy population that then can be out there doing what helps them develop to another level. So that's really what I think was covered in this panel, or what many people here in the room have been discussing and are going to discuss in a few hours to come. And I just want to say Africa needs to come together. We need to work together. We need to have this drive that everything is possible. In fact, I was telling Carlos earlier, who said that, you see, as everyone aims at this high end of technology, whether it is 4G, then 5G, in communicating on the ICTs that are at that high end, we should be aiming at that. But at the same time as we do that, we are able to create a dynamism that actually goes back and addresses those problems at the lower end that affect the majority of our people. So it's not saying, no, let's get stuck there, deal with the lower end problems that affect the majority of our people, and let's not go for this high end in terms of technology and innovation. No, but it is how to bridge this gap that it always allow us to advance and make the future happen the way we want it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Such a critical note, and can I just say to all institutions of higher learning that are present, whether you are universities, and thank you to Carnegie Mellon, but whether you are universities, whether you are tertiary training institutions, please innovate around our challenges. Let's do that. That way we'll scale up and truly transform. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our panel. And allow me to end with the words of Dr. Toure as we started. Africa Rising is not an empty narrative. Our place is at the high table, no longer on the menu. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie, for facilitating what was a very rich conversation. Our distinguished panelists, you have given us a lot of food for thought and a lot to unpack in the coming discussions on what will be the critical building blocks for Africa's single digital market. Thank you once again. A special thank you also to the United Nations, the President of the United Nations General Assembly, and Mr. Carlos Slim for joining in and enriching the conversation. Thank you once again.